I was sitting in my hotel room, preparing to go to bed. The clock on the nightstand showed just after 11 p.m. I was looking forward to a good night's rest after a long journey. Just as I was about to turn off the light, I heard some noises coming from the next room. At first I thought it was just the TV, but the sound got louder and clearer. I recognized my wife's voice even through the thin wall. Oh God, she was crying out, followed by a series of moans that made my stomach turn. I could hear the bed creaking and the headboard banging rhythmically against the wall. I had previously associated this sound only with intimacy, but now it felt like a dagger in my gut. Click, 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 her voice sounded again, accompanied by unmistakable sexual sounds. My mind is filled with disbelief and anger, mixed into a powerful emotion. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to confront her and her mysterious lover in the hotel room. I pick up my phone and plan to record what I hear as evidence. I take a deep breath, quietly walk out of the room and into the hallway. I don't know what to do next, but I can't just sit and wait for death. The sounds from the next room are getting louder and louder. As I approach the door, I hear the voice of her lover, S. It is now low and commanding, urging her on. Just like that baby, he moans. I clench my fists and can barely contain my anger. I take out the spare room key I stole from the cleaning trolley earlier that day, hoping it will open their room. If not, I am prepared to bash my way in. I inserted the card into the slot. The light turned green and a slight beep sounded. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I slowly turned the handle to push open the door, just in time to catch a glimpse of a sight I would never forget. My wife, naked, writhing on the bed, her lover on top of her, her back arched. I took a deep breath to try to calm myself down. This was the moment I had to act, but before I could, the door suddenly opened with a loud crash that startled all three of us. I was prepared to face them, but the scene before me took my breath away. Standing in the doorway was my best friend Jason, his face a mask of shock and betrayal, the same expression I had on my own face. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, his eyes darting between my wife and her lover. I watched as my wife's face paled and her eyes widened in fear. Her lover, meanwhile, jumped out of bed in a panic and tried to cover himself with the sheets. The tension in the room was palpable, and we all froze in our tracks as the reality of the situation hit us. This wasn't just my wife's betrayal, but also that of my best friend. The man standing in the doorway was supposed to be away on business, but here he was, discovering his wife's infidelity. The man in bed with my wife was Jason's brother, who had obviously taken advantage of his brother's absence to get involved in this affair. I can feel the anger building up inside me, but at the same time there is also a part of me that wants to collapse under the weight of this double betrayal. Jason S.'s face is twisted with anger as he rushes at his brother and knocks him to the ground with a punch. The bed creaks again as my wife rushes to cover herself and cries hysterically, "Get out!" Jason roars, grabbing his brother by the collar and dragging him towards the door. "Get out and don't ever come back." I stood there in stunned silence as Jason pushed his brother out of the room and turned to face me. We just stared at each other, two men united by heartbreak and anger, broken and angry. My wife was now curled up on the bed, looking at me with pleading eyes, but I had nothing to say to her. Jason broke the silence, his voice shaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I shook my head, unable to speak. There were no words that could explain the chaos. As Jason left the room, I knew that our lives had been irrevocably changed. The trap I had set had exploded, but the consequences were beyond anything I could have imagined. Jason S.'s departure left the room in a dead silence. My wife, Emily, sat by the bed, her hands covering her face, sobbing uncontrollably. We both realized the gravity of the situation. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. "How could you do this, Emily?" I finally suppressed my anger and asked with a trembling voice, "How could you do this to us?" She looked up at me with red, puffy eyes from crying. "I'm sorry, Tom, I never meant for this to happen, it just did, that's no excuse." I exploded with anger. "You didn't just happen to sleep with him, it was a choice you made, a selfish one." She winced at my words, but I couldn't feel any sympathy for her. I needed answers. I needed to know how everything had gone so wrong, and why it was him. I paced the room, trying to calm myself down. Why Jason S., everyone's brother? Emily took a deep breath. This wasn't planned. "Tom, we met a few months ago at a party. He was there when I felt like having a cup of tea. We started chatting, and then things just got out of hand. Her words stung me deeply. I've been so focused on work, thinking that I can support us, that I haven't noticed her gradual alienation. But that doesn't excuse her actions. Jason doesn't know, does he? I already knew the answer when I asked her, and she shook her head and said she didn't. We were careful and only met when he wasn't around. I felt sick when I heard her admit to the deception, the lies, and the elaborate schemes. I wanted to lash out at her and make her feel the pain she had caused me. Before I could say anything, the door was gently knocked on, creaked open, and there stood Laura, Jason S.'s wife. Her face a picture of utter devastation. She had obviously heard everything, and her eyes were filled with sadness and anger. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside to let her in. Emily's eyes widened as she stared at her, trembling, as Laura approached. The tension in the room was palpable. "I can't believe you do something like this." Laura's voice was cold and controlled, "betraying your husband and sleeping with my brother-in-law. How could you?"
Laura and I help Emily pack her things.
The three of us leave the hotel room and walk down the corridor in tense silence. Jason is waiting for us in the lobby. His face is a mask of unbridled anger. He is still in shock at the discovery that his wife is with his brother. I can see the pain in his eyes. "Let's leave," Laura says firmly. "We'll figure it out, but we can do it here." Jason nods, his jaw clenched. "Let's go. We'll talk when we get home." The journey back is unusually quiet. Emily sat next to me, head bowed, feeling ashamed. Jason and Laura sat in the back, lost in their own thoughts. The gravity of the situation was overwhelming, none of us knowing what the future held. When we finally arrived home, Laura and Jason went their separate ways, leaving Emily and me alone again. Everything in the house felt strange, full of memories of happy times. And now those memories seemed tainted. "Tom, please." Emily reached out and whispered to me. "I know I hurt you, but can we work this out? Can we find a way through this?" I looked at her, my heart filled with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive her and try to salvage the life we had built together, but the part of me that was hurt by the betrayal could see no way out. "I don't know, Emily. I honestly don't know if I can trust you again." She nodded, tears running down her face. "I understand. Just please let us try." As I stood there, torn between love and betrayal, I realized that this was only the beginning of a long and painful journey. The path ahead was uncertain, the future of our marriage hanging in the balance, and deep down I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, an awkward silence and unresolved tension hung over everything. Emily and I went about our daily lives as usual, but nothing felt right. The kitchen, which had once been full of laughter and shared memories, now felt like a battlefield, full of silent arguments. At noon, Jason called me. His voice carried the echoes of last night's chaos. "We need to meet Tom, just you and me, so we can figure out what we're going to do about this." I agreed, and we decided to meet at a small restaurant in the city center. It was a neutral place, far away from the memories of our broken marriage. When I arrived, Jason was already there, staring into his coffee cup with a thoughtful expression. I said, sliding into the seat opposite him. He looked up, his eyes tired and full of anger and sadness. We were silent for a few minutes, the heavy burden of our mutual betrayal hanging heavily between us. Finally, Jason spoke. "I never thought it would be like this. Tom betrayed me, not to mention my own brother and Emily. I feel like such a fool." "I feel the same way," I muttered, taking a sip of coffee. "I still can't accept how they could do this to us." Jason shook his head, a bitter smile curling the corners of his mouth. "People can be very selfish. That's the only explanation I can find." We chatted for a while longer, letting off steam and trying to make sense of the mess our lives had become. Our marriage was in jeopardy, and neither of us knew if it could be saved. "What are you going to do?" Jason finally asked, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "I don't know," I admit. Part of me wants to try to save it, but another part just wants to walk away and never look back. "What about you?" Jason let out a heavy sigh. "Laura and I talked last night. We're both heartbroken, but we'll go for counseling to see if there's anything we can do to save it." "What about Emily? Have you spoken to her?" I nodded. "We had a chat, but it was difficult. I don't know if I can trust her anymore." "Trust is a very delicate thing." Jason's voice softened. "Once broken, trust is hard to repair, but if you still love her, it might be worth a try." I thanked him for his words, even though they didn't make it any easier to make a decision. We finished our coffee and went our separate ways, back to our respective hells. When I got home, Emily was sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and puffy from crying. When I came in, she looked up, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She asked tentatively, "How's Jason?" I replied, "Not good." We were both trying to figure out what to do next. Emily nodded, her hands nervously twisting on her lap. "Tom, I know I've broken your trust in me, but I want to try to fix it. I want to go to counseling and do everything I can to repair our relationship." I took a deep breath and considered her words. Counseling might be a good idea, but Emily, it won't be easy. It will take a lot of time and effort, and I can't promise that everything will go back to the way it was. I understand what she's saying, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. We decided to start marriage counseling, hoping that it would help us through the rough road ahead. The first session was scheduled for the following week, and in the meantime we tried to get along as peacefully as possible. It wasn't easy, and every glance and every touch was fraught with tension and unspeakable pain. On the day of the first session, we arrived at the therapist's office with anxiety and hope. Dr. Turner was a kind, middle-aged woman who welcomed us warmly and guided us into her comfortable office. "Thank you for coming," she began in a soothing voice. "I know this is a difficult time for both of you. You both, by coming here, have shown that you are willing to work on your problems, and that is an important first step." Emily and I exchange a hesitant glance. Neither of us is sure what to expect. Dr. Turner encourages us to share our feelings openly and assures us that this is a safe place. Emily speaks first, her voice trembling. "I know I have deeply hurt Tom, and I am so sorry for what I have done. I never meant to betray him, but I let myself get caught up in things that were out of my control. Things I can't control. I want to make things right, but I don't know how." When it was my turn to speak, I listened to her confession with a mixture of emotions, anger, and sadness. I struggled to find the right words. "I love you, Emily. I trusted you, and you betrayed that trust. I don't know if I can forgive you for what you've done, but I still love you, and that's why I'm here. I want to try, but I don't know if it's enough." Dr. Turner nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once broken, it takes time to rebuild. Emily, it is important that you understand the depth of this pain and take responsibility for your actions. Tom, it is important that you express your feelings openly, even if they are difficult to hear." We spent the rest of the session exploring our emotions in depth, exploring the root causes of the problem and discussing ways to rebuild trust. It was exhausting and painful, but also, for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. As we left Dr. Turner's office, Emily held out her hand. I hesitated for a moment, then shook it and gave it a gentle squeeze. It was a small, insignificant gesture, but it felt like a step in the right direction. Over the next few weeks, our emotions went up and down like a roller coaster. We attended regular counseling sessions, each of which gave us a deeper insight into our relationship. Some days were better than others. Sometimes we were in tune with each other. Sometimes we were angry and suspicious. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion, we were sitting on the sofa when Emily turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Tom, I have something to tell you." Her voice was almost inaudible. There was more to the story. "I haven't been completely honest with you." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. "That night at the hotel, it wasn't the first time I'd seen Jason. My brother had met him a few months ago. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid it would be too heavy and ruin our chance of repairing our relationship." Her confession hit me like a ton of bricks. The depth of the betrayal was beyond my imagination, and the pain was almost unbearable. "I can't believe it," I said, my voice trembling. "How can I believe what you say when you've been lying to me?" Emily broke down and couldn't stop crying. "Tom, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but I'm trying to make it up to you. Please give me a chance." I stood up, my thoughts in a whirl. I needed time to think. I couldn't deal with this right away. I left the house, needing to clear my head. The night air was cool and fresh. I walked aimlessly, my thoughts in a mess, my emotions running high. How could she do this to me? How could she deceive and betray me so completely? As I wandered the streets, I found myself in a park where I had spent many happy times. The memories were bittersweet and in stark contrast to the reality we face today. I sat on a bench and gazed at the stars, allowing the tears to flow. I didn't know if our marriage could survive this latest blow, But I knew that I had to try for my own sake, for Emily's sake, and for the love we had shared. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but as I sat there I promised myself that I would do everything I could to heal and find a way forward, no matter how difficult it was. Only time would tell if our love was strong enough to survive the trials we faced the next morning. I woke up with a heavy heart. Emily's confession had deepened my pain, and I didn't know how to move on. I decided to contact Dr. Turner, hoping she could help me process this new information. When I arrived at her office, she greeted me with a warm smile. "Tom, I heard from Emily about the latest developments. I'm glad you reached out to me. It's a difficult situation, but we'll get through it together." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I don't know what to do, Dr. Turner. I thought I was ready to try to rebuild our relationship, but now I'm not so sure." She leaned forward with a sympathetic expression. "It's normal to feel this way. Betrayal is one of the most difficult things to overcome in a relationship, but the fact that you're here talking about it shows that you still care. Let's explore your feelings and see where it leads." I poured out my heart, sharing the pain, anger, and confusion that had been plaguing me since Emily's latest confession, listened patiently, and offered gentle guidance and support. At the end, I felt more grounded, even though the path ahead still seemed daunting. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me. Her eyes were red from crying and she looked genuinely remorseful. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. I sighed and sat down beside her. This helped. "Dr. Turner has given me something to think about, but Emily, this is going to be a long and difficult journey. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive you, but I'm willing to give it a try." She nodded, tears running down her face. "Thank you, Tom. I know I don't deserve it, but I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make up for it." Over the next few days, we took tentative steps towards recovery. We continued counseling, together and separately. Emily opened up about the reasons behind the affair, revealing deep-seated insecurities and feelings of neglect. As painful as it was to hear, it also gave me a better understanding of her actions. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, we decided to go for a walk in the park. The air was cool and the stars were just peeking out from behind the clouds. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Emily asked softly, full of nostalgia. I smiled faintly. "It was our third date. You had prepared a picnic for us, and we talked for hours, laughing and joking. It was a perfect day." She nodded, her eyes filled with longing. "I want to go back to the past. I want to find that happiness again, but I know it won't be easy." As we strolled along, I realized that despite everything, I still loved her. The road to rebuilding our relationship would be long and hard, but I was willing to take it step by step. Weeks turned into months, and slowly we began to find a new rhythm. Trust is a fragile thing and takes time to rebuild. Despite setbacks and doubts, we forged ahead, determined to put our relationship back on track. During one of our sessions, Dr. Turner suggested that we go away for the weekend to help us reconnect. It was a daunting prospect, but we agreed to give it a try. We chose a mountain cabin far away from our daily lives. The first day was awkward, full of tentative conversations and forced smiles. But as the weekend wore on, we began to relax, hike in the woods, cook together, and even laugh. It was only a small step, but it felt like progress. On the last night, we sat by the fireplace, the warmth of the flames casting a soft glow across the room. Emily looked at me, her eyes full of hope and fear. "Tom, I know we've been through a lot, and I don't expect everything to be perfect, but I want you to know that our marriage, to win back your trust." I reached out and took her hand. "I believe in you, Emily, and I promise that we still have a long way to go, but I'm willing to fight for us." As we sat there holding hands and gazing into the fire, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was full of challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. When we got home, we continued to work hard to rebuild our relationship. We set aside time each week to spend together, and made an effort to communicate honestly. It wasn't always easy, and sometimes the pain of the past would overwhelm us. But we kept moving forward, determined to build a new foundation for our marriage. Months passed, and slowly things began to improve. The scars of betrayal would never completely heal, but they were beginning to fade. We learned to trust each other again, to find joy in the ordinary moments, and to cherish the love we still had. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a shy smile and said, "Tom, I have something for you." She handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box containing a silver bangle with a simple, elegant design. I looked at her in confusion. It was a promise bracelet. She explained that it symbolized my commitment to you and to us. I know words are not enough, so I wanted to give you something tangible, something you can hold on to in difficult times. I put the bracelet on my wrist and a wave of emotion washed over me. Thank you, Emily, this means the world to me. She leaned in, her eyes sparkling with love and gratitude. I love you, Tom. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm so grateful that you're willing to forgive me and fight for us. I love you too, I replied, kissing her softly. We've been through so much, and I know that as long as we're together, we can overcome anything. As we sat there, embracing each other, I realized that while the journey had been incredibly difficult, it had also brought us closer in a way I never thought possible. We had been through the darkest of times, but emerged stronger and more resilient, more committed to each other than ever before. The road to healing and rebuilding our marriage was far from over, but I knew we would continue to move forward together, one step at a time, and I knew that was all that mattered. As we settled into our new routine, things began to gradually return to normal. Emily and I continued counseling, and we both worked hard to become more engaged and attentive to each other, as needed. Our relationship was still fragile, but the progress we had made gave me hope. One weekend, we decided to go for a day trip to the beach. It was a place where we had many happy memories, and we hoped that it would help us to reconnect. The sun was shining, and the hopeful sea breeze promised a new beginning. We spread out a blanket on the sand and spent the whole day swimming and chatting. For the first time in a long time, we felt like we were truly enjoying each other's company, without the shadow of the past looming over us. In the evening, the sun began to sink below the horizon. We walked along the shore, the sea lapping at our feet. Emily put her hand in mine. It felt so good, she said, her voice soft, as if we were returning to who we once were. I nodded, squeezing her hand. Yes, we've been through a lot. Emily, I'm so proud of us. She smiled, but I saw a twinkle in her eyes. She hesitated, as if she were about to say something. Tom, there's something I need to tell you. I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. What is it? She took a deep breath and looked out to sea. I've been keeping something from you. I didn't want to before because I was afraid it would make things worse, but I know I need to be completely honest with you. My heart raced as I waited for her to continue, and I was seeing Jason's brother, and I found out that he was involved in some illegal activities. At first I didn't want to believe it, but it was obvious that he was deeply involved. He asked me to help him launder money, and in a moment of weakness I agreed. Her words hit like a punch hit deep inside. Emily, why didn't you tell me earlier? She looked at me with regret in her eyes. I was scared, Tom. I didn't want to get you involved, and even more so, I didn't want you to look down on me. But I realized that if we were going to continue, I had to come clean. I took a step back and tried to process the new information. What does this mean for us, Emily? Are we in danger? No, I don't think so, she said quickly. I've cut all ties with him, and I made it clear that I wouldn't be involved in anything like that again, but I know it is a lot to take in, and I understand if you are angry. I was. Angry that she had kept something so serious from me, and angry that her actions had put us at risk. But more than anything, I was tired of the secrets and the lies I needed to think, to figure out what this meant for our future. We got back in the car, and I said my voice was strained. We need to talk about this. The atmosphere was tense on the drive home, and Emily, who was silent, kept glancing at me. But I couldn't bring myself to look at her. My mind was full of questions and doubts. When we got home, I sat at the kitchen table with my hands on my head. Emily stood opposite me, looking lost and vulnerable. Tom, please, she said, her voice trembling. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right. I don't want to lose you. I took a deep breath, looked up and met her gaze. I need to know everything, no secrets, no lies. If we are going to rebuild our marriage, I need you to be completely honest. She nodded and tears streamed down her face. I promise, Tom, no secrets. I'll tell you everything over the next few hours. Emily poured out everything, her affair with Jason's brother, the money laundering, and the fear that had kept her silent. It was a lot to take in, but as I listened to her, I realized that she truly felt remorse and was determined to make amends. I'm willing to forgive you, Emily, I said at the end, But it's going to be a long road, and we would need to rebuild trust from scratch, which would take time and effort from both of us. I understand, she replied, her voice full of determination. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. We continued counseling, focusing on open communication and rebuilding trust. Emily did her best to be transparent about everything, and slowly began to see a glimmer of hope that we could get through this. One evening, we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Emily turned to me with a determined look in her eyes. Tom Avery had decided to report everything to the authorities. It was the only way we could truly let go of the past and move on. I was taken aback. Are you sure this is a risk? She nodded. I know, but it's the right thing to do. I could keep running away from my mistakes, but it's time to face the consequences and start over. I admired her courage, and it gave me hope that we were on the right path. The next day, Emily contacted the authorities and provided them with all the information. It was a difficult and stressful process, but she handled the investigation with grace and determination. As the investigation unfolded, we continued to focus on rebuilding our relationship. We took small steps every day, finding ways to re-establish trust, even though it had been shattered. It wasn't easy, and we still felt doubt and fear, but we faced it together. A few went by, the pain of the past slowly began to fade. Our marriage was far from perfect, but it was stronger and more resilient than ever. We had been through the darkest of times and ultimately emerged stronger than ever, with a commitment to each other that was more unwavering than ever. One evening, as we sat on the porch and stared at the stars, Emily took my hand and said, "Thank you, Tom, for giving us a second chance." I squeezed her hand and felt a sense of peace and contentment. Thank you for fighting for us, Emily. We've been through a lot, but I believe that as long as we're together, we can overcome anything. As we sat there holding each other, I realized that although the journey had been incredibly difficult, it had also brought us closer in a way I never thought possible. We'd been through the darkest of times, but emerged stronger, tougher, and more committed to each other than ever before. Moments, stronger, tougher, and more committed to each other. The road to healing and rebuilding our marriage is far from over, but I know that we will continue to move forward together, one step at a time, and I know that that is all that matters. Weeks turned into months, and the stability in our relationship began to grow. The investigation into the Jason S. brothers continued, but Emily and I chose to focus on rebuilding our lives rather than dwelling on the past. We worked hard to reconnect, and our efforts to communicate more openly had paid off. For the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about the future. One weekend, we decided to celebrate our progress by hosting a small dinner for our closest friends and reconnect with those who had supported us through our darkest hours. Jason and Laura were among the guests, and while there was still some awkwardness between us, we were both committed to moving forward. The dinner was full of laughter and delicious food, reminding us of a part of our lives. As the night drew to a close, Jason pulled me aside. "Tom, I want to thank you for giving Emily and me a chance to get things right." He said it with sincerity, and I know it hasn't been easy, but I appreciate your willingness to work through it. I nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie. It hasn't been easy for any of us, but I think we've all come out of it stronger for it. To a brighter future, we clinked glasses and silently promised to continue to support each other and face all future challenges together. As the guests began to leave, Emily and I were alone in the kitchen, cleaning up and reflecting on the evening. "It was really nice," she said, smiling as she handed me a plate to dry. It felt so good to be surrounded by friends again. I agreed, feeling a warm feeling in my heart. We've come a long way. Emily, I'm so proud of us." She leaned down and gave me a soft kiss. "I'm proud of us too." "Tom, I love you. I love you too," I replied, putting my arms around her, looking forward to what the future would bring. The following week, we received a call from the authorities investigating the Jason S. brothers. They had gathered enough evidence to press charges, and they wanted to meet Emily to complete her statement. The meeting was arranged for the following day. Although we were both nervous, we knew it was a necessary step to put this chapter behind us. At the police station, Emily gave a statement detailing her involvement in the incident and her relationship with Jason's bros. The officers expressed their understanding and support and affirmed her courage in coming forward. After the meeting, as we walked back to the car, Emily seemed much more relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It hasn't been easy, but I feel better now." She took my hand as if I could finally breathe again. I squeezed her hand and gave her a relieved smile. "Emily, you did the right thing. I'm proud of you." As we drove home, I realized that this was the darkest time we had ever been through, and we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to be there for each other. Over the next few months, we had many small victories and countless moments of joy. Emily and I continued to attend counseling sessions, but we also found time to have fun and take risks. We went away for weekends, tried new hobbies, and rediscovered the simple joys of being together. One evening, we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Tom, there's something I've been thinking about," she said, her voice a little hesitant. "I know we've been through a lot and I don't want to rush things, but I've been thinking about starting a family." Her words took me by surprise, but when I looked into her eyes, I saw sincerity and hope in them. "Do you want to have a child?" She nodded, a shy smile curling the corners of her mouth. "Yes. I know it's a big step, but I feel like we're ready. We've come so far. I'm sure we can do it together." I took a deep breath and considered what she had said. Starting a family had always been part of our plans, but the events of the past year had put a hold on things. As I looked at Emily, I realized that I was ready too. "I think we are ready," I said, my heart full of love and anticipation. "Let's do it." Emily's smile grew even wider, and she leaned in to kiss me. "I love you, Tom. I'm so excited about our future." "I love you too," I replied, hugging her tightly, eager to see what the future would bring for us. The decision to start a family brought a new sense of purpose and excitement to our lives. We began to make plans for the next stage of our lives together. It was a time of hope and anticipation, a testament to the strength of our love and commitment. As time passed, Emily and I grew closer than ever. Our bond had withstood tests we never imagined, and emerged stronger and more resilient. We had weathered the darkest and found each other. Embracing, we were ready to face the future together. One evening, we sat on the porch, looking at the stars twinkling in the night sky. I took Emily's hands in mine. "Emily, I want to thank you for never giving up on us," I said, moved. "We've been through so much, but we're stronger and more in love than ever." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Tom, for forgiving me, believing in us, and giving me a second chance. I love you in a way that words cannot express." "I love you too," I replied, leaning in to kiss her. "We can wait and see what the future holds for us and our family." As we sat there in each other's arms, I realized that although our journey had been incredibly difficult, it had also brought us closer in a way I never thought possible. We had been through the darkest of times and come out stronger, tougher, and more committed to each other than ever. Healing and rebuilding, our marriage was far from over, but I knew we would continue to move forward together, and I knew that was all that mattered. The next few months were full of anticipation and a renewed sense of purpose. Emily and I began preparing for our future family, and the excitement of starting a new chapter brought us even closer together. We attended antenatal classes, researched baby names, and spent many hours discussing our hopes and dreams for our future child. One sunny afternoon, as we were out shopping for baby gear, my phone rang. It was Jason. "Hey, Tom," he said, with an unusual sense of urgency in his voice. "Do you have a minute? There's something we need to talk about." "Sure. What is it?" I asked, leaving the aisle and finding a quiet place. It's about my brother. Jason's investigation has taken a new turn, and there's something you and Emily need to know." My heart sank. Mentioning Jason's brother made me think we'd put that chapter behind us, but it seems not. "Okay, let's meet up. Can you come to our place tonight?" I suggest we check on Emily, who is checking out baby clothes with a satisfied smile. "Okay, no problem. See you then." Jason agreed, then hung up. We finished shopping and were ready to go home. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Emily noticed my silence and reached out to take my hand. "Is everything okay?" she asked, concerned. Jason called. I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. "Wanted to talk about the investigation. There's been a development." Emily smiled, but the smile faded and was replaced by a look of unease. "What do you think it will be?" "I don't know, but we'll find out tonight," I said, while squeezing her hand to comfort her. That evening, Jason came to our house with a serious expression. Laura was with him, and her presence was a relief, a sign that we weren't alone. "Thank you for meeting with us," Jason said, as we all sat down in the living room. The investigation has revealed more clues about my brother's activities, and the situation is worse than we thought. Emily and I exchanged worried looks as Jason continued. They found him involved in a much larger criminal network. They're still putting all the details together, but the part that concerns us is that they found evidence that he planned to use his connections to draw more people into his conspiracy, including you, Emily. Emily's face paled and she gripped my hand. What do you mean? Jason let out a heavy sigh. He had the file with your name in his hand, Emily, and it looked like he was going to use your leverage again to blackmail you into helping him. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation gradually dawned. Emily was more deeply involved than we had thought, and the danger she faced was far greater than we had imagined. What should we do now? I was worried sick about Emily and our baby, and I was spinning out of control. The authorities are already aware of the situation, Jason explained, and they have offered support to ensure her safety. They also advised us to remain vigilant and report anything suspicious. Emily nodded firmly. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep our family safe. I'm tired of running. Despite everything we've been through, I'm filled with pride and love for her. Emily's strength and determination are unwavering. Thank you for telling us, Jason, I said, my voice full of gratitude. We will do whatever it takes to get through this. When Jason and Laura left, Emily and I sat quietly, digesting the information. The shadows of the past still loomed over us, but we were determined to face them together. Over the next few weeks, we met with authorities non-stop to ensure the safety of our home and Emily. The stress was palpable, but we supported each other because we knew our bond was stronger than ever. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Emily looked at me firmly. Tom, I've been thinking, and maybe it's time to start over somewhere else. Somewhere where we can leave everything behind and focus on the future. I considered her idea. Starting over was both daunting and appealing. Do you mean moving? She nodded. Yes, somewhere else, starting over. We've come so far, and it would be good for us and our family. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Starting over would give us the chance to leave the past behind and start a new life together, free from the shadows that haunted us. You're right, I felt a sense of relief. Let's get moving. Let's find a new home. Over the next few weeks, we searched for a new home, a place to create new memories and focus on the future. We finally found a charming house in a quiet town far from the city and all its reminders of the past. Moving house is both exhilarating and bittersweet. We packed our bags, said goodbye to friends and neighbors, and set off on a new journey. As we settled into our new home, a sense of peace and hope enveloped us, which was undeniable. One evening, as we stood in the backyard of our new home watching the sunset, Emily took my hand and said, "It feels good," her voice full of contentment. A new beginning that belongs only to us. I nodded, feeling deeply grateful. Yes, I was ready for whatever came next, as long as we were together, embracing each other. I realized that although our journey had been exceptionally difficult, it had also brought us closer together in ways I never would have imagined. We had been through the darkest of times and emerged stronger, tougher, and more committed to each other than ever before. The road to healing and rebuilding our marriage was far from over, but I knew we would continue to take it one step at a time, and I knew that was all that mattered. We started a new life in a picturesque town, which provided us with the fresh start we needed. Emily and I settled into a peaceful routine, enjoying the simplicity and tranquility of our new surroundings. We decorated the baby's room, took walks in the nearby woods, and sat on the porch at night, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. Emily's pregnancy went smoothly, and we couldn't contain our joy and excitement at the prospect of welcoming a child into our lives. Our feelings grew stronger every day, and trust and understanding became the foundation of our renewed relationship. On a crisp autumn morning, we were having breakfast when Emily suddenly covered her stomach. I felt both excited and anxious. I thought she must have said it with trembling fear and anticipation. I immediately got up, grabbed our hospital bag, and helped Emily into the car. Transported to the delivery room, my emotions became blurry in the next few hours. I held Emily's hand, giving her encouragement and love as she worked to bring our baby into the world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the room filled with the sound of a newborn's cry, and tears of joy streamed down my face. The doctor announced that it was a girl, and placed our squirming little daughter in Emily's arms. Emily looked down at our daughter, her eyes filled with love and awe. She was perfect, she whispered, her voice breaking. I leaned down and kissed Emily on the forehead, then kissed our daughter's little hand. She has come into the world, and we welcome her, little one. We named her Grace to symbolize the second chance that has been given to us, and the new life that our family is about to embrace. The days that followed were filled with countless sleepless nights, countless nappy changes, and the immense joy of watching our daughter grow and thrive. One night, I held Grace in my arms and rocked her gently to sleep. She fell asleep. I thought back to the journey that had brought us to this moment, the pain and betrayal, the struggle to rebuild trust, and the decision to start a new life had brought us here. It had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Emily and I embraced. We did it, Tom. We made it through the storm. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and love. We did it. I couldn't have done it without you. She smiles and leans her head on my shoulder. We are a team, just as we were when we stood there watching our daughter sleep. I know that our journey is far from over and that there will be challenges and obstacles ahead, but we have already proven that we can face them together. Our love has been tested and has become stronger, more resilient and more enduring than ever. The journey of healing and rebuilding our marriage will continue, but I know that as long as we have each other, we can overcome anything. This is the most precious gift that God has given us in the years to come. Emily and I continue to nurture our love and commitment for each other, celebrating Grace's milestones as she grows, from her first steps to her first words, and cherishing the simple, beautiful moments of family life. Our relationship has deepened with the passing of the years, and the trust we worked so hard to rebuild has become the cornerstone of our relationship. We face challenges and setbacks together, knowing that our love and determination will guide us.